Thank you for joining us in From the Dust with Sara in part 3, as Sara teaches us how to let go of what we think going on the way or talking to celestial beings should look like and embrace what works for us individually.
But if we're done, then he's done. He's not going to keep giving answers and inspiration to us unless we're willing to listen. And like I say,
You're listening to another episode of From the Dust with Sara Decker, a place to explore spiritual experiences and topics. And no, we are never alone.
What do you think is the thing that holds us back mostly from going on the way?
Disbelief, a hardness of heart. You know, some people... I experienced some of it, myself, where, in my life, I just didn't know it was possible. So because people don't share these spiritual gifts that they have, we don't even know they exist, right? We don't even know it's possible. So if we're able to share our gifts and to increase the faith in humanity, then these gifts will be unlocked. The Book of Mormon says that if these miracles, and if you don't see spiritual gifts, it's because of lack of faith. If you're not seeing miracles, it's because of lack of faith, right? And so if we can truly understand that this is possible, and that not only is it possible, it's foretold.
Mm-hmm.
And the scriptures talk about the end times, when they're talking about, heaven or Zion coming down from above. That's God sending angelic messengers to teach you. And when he talks about Zion coming up from below, he's saying, please rise. Please rise to meet these heavenly messengers. Please rise to our better existence in life. This isn't where I've left you. I don't want you here forever. I want you to rise. Rise to a better existence. Rise to a place of greater faith. Rise to receive the messengers and the answers and the truth, really.
Thank you. I did find those photos that so she might want to splice this in and put it back in earlier, but I'll go ahead and share that now. This goes back to this is Haley Joe Osment, and this isn't the picture that came in my mind, but as soon as I had that vision, I went and looked up pictures of Haley Joe Osment, and I had found this one, and it was important enough that I kept it, and it's in one of my favorites. And all I remember thinking at the time was really, really close. My son's has a rounder face. And I'll go ahead and show you a picture that's recent of my son. This is when he turned, he's 9 years old at the time of this picture. And it's just, I don't know how to put the two side by side, but this is my son, Bentley. A little bit rounder face, pretty much the same hair. Yeah. It just created something as like an eerie thing for me. Like, wow, okay, I have seen him. That was him that I got the vision of earlier on.
I've had my own similar things. I'm still waiting for it to. My children are still too young for me to see the image I saw in person, because I saw them in spirit. My daughter, I saw her in spirit standing before me, and she was a woman, and she's only 5 right now. So I don't know. I haven't gotten to see her in her adult form yet, in her physical adult form, but I know what her spirit looked like. She reminded me of my mother, and my mom, when she was younger, she looked so much like my mom, with maybe her face looking a little bit more like me. But my mom and I actually look a lot alike. So very much like my mother. And then when I saw my son, I remember when I met him, him I met in a dream, but he was just standing there smiling at me with this like kind of, I know something you don't know smile. And I stood there staring at him and I'm like, who are you? And even in dreams, when they're inspired dreams, you often have a guide, or the spirit kind of directs you to notice certain things or points out certain things to you. You kind of have a bit of a guide in inspired dreams. But that was, so in that moment, I was like, who are you? And he said, I'm your son, Eric Joseph Spencer. And I was like, my son? And the spirit kind of pointed out to me how he looked, because I was staring at him and he had dark hair. It was long. It came down to like here, long, straight, dark hair. He had nice looking clothes on, but it wasn't like a t-shirt. It was like he had this like vest thing on. It wasn't a button-up shirt though, but he looked nice. It was like, I don't know. I don't even know. But anyways, he looked really nice, but he was like probably in his early 20s. And I looked at his face and I thought, wow, he looks a lot like my brother Ben. And my brother Ben is an adult now. I've seen him as an adult and I knew what he looked like as a child. And I'm like, wow, this person, who is he? He looks a lot like my brother Ben. And he looks a lot like my husband at the time, Jeff. And it was like the spirit pointed out to me what things about his face looked like my brother. And the spirit then pointed out to me what about him looked like my husband at the time. And I was like, wow, you really are like my family, that's incredible. And I said, wow, Eric, huh? Because I had never considered the name Eric. And he said, no, Eric Joseph. Okay, I got the memo.
I like that name.
It's
I like
not
that
just
name.
Eric Joseph.
My son is Joseph Bentley.
That's awesome. Yeah, and so it was really interesting. So when he was born, we hadn't chosen a name. We had a couple ideas for names, and my friend who was there at the time, she just turned to us and she said, "It's a boy," because we never even find out gender until they're born, right? And so she's helping clean him up after he've given birth and everything. And she's like, oh, it's a boy. And as soon as she just hollered that, right, was so excited, I heard this voice just speak to me, Eric Joseph Spencer. And it said it twice, Eric Joseph Spencer.
Wow.
And at the time, I had that dream while I was pregnant, and then I miscarried. Right. So I actually thought Eric Joseph Spencer, I wouldn't get to meet until the millennium or something, that I would have to raise him in another time, in another life kind of thing, because I had lost him. I really thought that. And so when he was born and that voice, I knew that's who he was. I knew that was his name. And he was here and I got to meet him, and it was such a special thing. And it also leads to a message, though, as well, is that sometimes we receive an answer. Like I received this dream while I was pregnant, and then I miscarried. And so I believed that baby was the one I dreamed about, right? The one I lost. And after I asked, I had prayed about that after I gave birth to Eric Joseph. And I asked Heavenly Father about that. I said, wait a second, I thought I miscarried this baby. I'm grateful, obviously, but what was that about? Like, I want to understand. And he told me that I had assumed I had lost him, that was the baby I had lost. Like, he had never said that, and that there was always more to understand. And that sometimes, so the lesson is that sometimes we receive answers and revelation and inspiration, and we think we understand the whole story. But sometimes we need to come back. We need to come back and ask better questions, more questions, clarifying questions. And sometimes we don't even think about those questions until we receive further revelation. And then it makes us wonder about a previous revelation that we had. We look back and go, hey, we went out with this new information, this doesn't quite make sense anymore with what I thought I understood about the previous revelation. So let me ask some more clarifying questions. Let me try to understand this more. And so I would also say just that you don't have the whole story. That is so apparent to me as I talk to these messengers, is that they'll give you a bit of the story that you can understand right now, and then they come back to expound. Or they will wait for you to be curious and kind of have these questions and seek that expounding information. So stay open to the story.
Yeah. There's more than what is initially presented. I am the opposite. I get up and stop my prayer way too fast. This is where it's really good for me to watch my wife, Angie, because as she's in prayer, she'll get an answer, but she doesn't get up. And she'll ask for more or ask for more clarification. And the Lord is willing to give it to us. But if we're done, then he's done. He's not going to keep giving answers and inspiration to us unless we're willing to listen. And like I say, sometimes she'll be on her knees for a half hour, and it's not uncommon. And she says she'll go back and forth and getting more clarification. And then he gives her an answer, and then she asks about that. And I think back to the number of times where as soon as I've given an answer, I pretty much, well, thanks, God. And I get up, and that's pretty much the end of my prayer. And that's never the way this is supposed to be intended. I'm just starting to get there, and I'm the one that's terminating the experience. I'm the one that's saying I've had enough, and I'm not asking for clarification. And like Sara was just saying, he's willing to share with us more. They're willing to expound upon that. They're willing to open up the dialogue and communicate, but we also have to know that that's even possible. And that's where being able to witness what Sara does and what my wife does with how she's communicating with our Father. She's also had the ability to have Eve mention things to her. And I don't know how she didn't notice it, but she's like, she didn't realize that was part of this going on the way, that she just like, well, I just knew that this was what Eve was trying to tell me. And I'm like, well, duh, that's this, but again, we're looking for something different because we're looking to see them. We're looking to absolutely know without a doubt we're on the way. And sometimes it doesn't start that way. When we met with Sara, we went to Admon-Dayam the second time that we did this, and we knew that Moroni was there because he was wanting to talk with us the previous day, and we're running out of time. Is it okay if we meet again later? And he said, sure, that's fine. I'd love that. And so that was actually a good thing because I had the opportunity to sit back for 2 days and think, what do I want to ask Moroni? And be able to store up some questions of this is what I want. And I'm like, okay, well, the one thing I want to know how do I go on the way easier? How do you do this? Moroni had a hard time going on the way. And in his book, in the Nemenhah record, you learn how difficult that was for him. And part of the reason he says is because of all the destruction and killing and everything that he had done, to being able to clear his mind of all that atrocities and get back to spiritual only, put aside all the things of the world, all the memories that he had. And to be able to go on the way was a difficult thing for him. He built medicine bundles, he did extra ceremonies, he created things, and he describes all of that in his record. And I'm like, look, I'm trying all of this, and it's like, what else can I do so that I can see better? And he's like, you just need to believe. Then he said, I want to do a little exercise with you. He says, where am I standing? And my wife and I and Jeff, who was with us, we all pointed to one spot at the table. We're like, you're standing right there. He's like, yeah. He's like, you know where I am. And he says, you have to trust in that. You have to trust in that feeling. At this point, we're not seeing him. We're just physically like the four of us, two on one side of a picnic table, two on the other side of a picnic table, but we all know where Moroni is standing. And so that was a really good message for me. Like, hey, we're not necessarily doing it perfect yet, but we're getting better. Moroni gave us the message. He says, you know what to do. Go anoint your eyes to see. Go anoint your ears to hear, and go anoint your heart to feel. This is something that some friends and I were actually getting ready to get together in the next couple of weeks and do these anointings specifically for this purpose of going on the way. Yes, we've been anointed in the temple, but we're wanting to go on the way. So we're going to do a specific anointing out in nature. And the way the Nemenha would have done it, they did most of their things out in nature, trying to connect with everything. And I think that's, I can't say for sure, but this was his instruction to us of what to do. So I'm absolutely going to follow it. Then after a short period of time, he said, now where am I standing? And we all pointed, we're like, you're right behind us. And he's like, yes, well, I am. I'm right behind you. And Sara confirmed it. He's like, he's standing right behind there. And she said, he's got his hands on your shoulders. Do you feel that? And I think she was communicating for him, and we're like, yeah, we can feel that. So it is closer than we think sometimes. We literally just have to trust that it's there. He also said, when he's told us when Sara first started this, it was hard for her. Like she said, she'd get a few words out of the bunch and wasn't really sure. But we have to start somewhere. And it's not going to be perfect at first. But we do have to start somewhere if we want to do this, if we want to communicate in this way. And just knowing that it's possible and that they're there to help us and teach us and share with us, it's the most amazing thing. I can't wait to talk with my ancestors. One person that came to us was my daughter. And I don't know that I would change anything any differently. My first wife and I, she was pregnant, and then shortly after the, when they'd start doing the ultrasounds and whatnot, they found endometriosis, and they were really concerned about, I guess it was pretty bad, but they were really concerned about the baby surviving the pregnancy. And they didn't feel that it would. It was less than a 50% chance survival rate. And not just that, but there was risk to my wife as well. And it was really hard for me to push the feelings that I had that everything would be okay, and just encourage, like, hey, let's go through with this. I just feel like everything's going to be okay. It's not me putting my life at risk. It was her putting her life at risk. And I said, ultimately, I says, you have to make the decision for this, which I don't think was a really helpful thing to do, but it was, I can't, God never is going to instill his will upon us. We all have our individual choice, and he's never going to force us into anything. So I felt too, like, at the same token, I can't force my will or my thoughts or my decisions or my feelings on somebody else. So even if the situation were different, ultimately it's still up to her. Her life was the one that was at risk, not mine. And she has to make that decision and be comfortable with that decision. And ultimately we chose to abort that baby. And she came to us, and it was an incredible experience. I couldn't even remember at the time. And it started coming back to me days later. It's like, oh yeah, it was a girl. Like I do remember that now. I do remember that. But these are all things that I had forgotten over, I don't know, 18 years or so, since this had all happened. And it was nice to have her come back and all she had was love and joy and feeling for us. But she said something that was really surprising to me. She's like, this was part of the plan. She's like, I accepted this plan knowing full well everything that would happen. And this was part of the plan to make you who you are today. I was not the person to sit and be noticed. I was not the one to speak up. I'm happy to be in the back of the room or the side, laying low, keeping my head down, going unnoticed, and not making any ripples in the world. And my wife's always my new wife. The last one when we got divorced, and then I remarried, and of course now I have a son. She's like, I've never known you to be that person. And I'm like, no, but you have to understand. And like, that's just who I am today. I'm different as a result of something. And the interesting thing was, even when we were flying out, I was commenting to her, I can't believe how different I am than previously. And of course, she never knew that person. Only I knew that person, but I didn't know the event that changed it. I figured I was just getting to be old, codgery person, and I'm not going to take any garbage, and I'm not, you're just rough around the edges. You're just not looking to polish anything up anymore or be smooth or worried about how it sounds or whatnot. That you're just, something's happened, and all of a sudden I'm a bold person and willing to share at any moment's notice whatever comes to my impression. And she said, do you understand the lesson? She says, not speaking up was a lesson in having a loud voice. And I have mulled that over 100 times since we met and we had the conversation, and I've listened to it too. So one of the things that Sara prompted, she's like, hey, record this session. So I've listened to Moroni's communication to us. He talked for about a half an hour. I've listened to him. I've listened to my daughter over and over. I've listened to an ancestor that came, and then Matthew also, one of the disciples also came after that. And listening to their testimonies over and over, knowing how they really are here to help us and encourage us and help us to develop. This is not just something that we can do or a lucky thing. Like, they really want to be there to help us become who we are meant to be. We are meant for things that we don't understand, and they're here to help us learn what we're meant for. Sara, after listening to those 4 conversations that we had on Diamond with those people that came to visit with us that day, I can only think back to how amazing it's going to be when Sara makes more available all these things, because they are just amazing conversation. This is like, you want to talk about listening to conference talks. Like, these are, wow, the most amazing talks that you can have is the inspiration that they give us and the advice that they give us and the counsel that they give us after they have passed on and what they come back and they're willing to share with us. This is the important stuff, and we need to make this available. So, little shout out to anybody that's listening to this. If you have the ability to help create a website, or we're trying to figure out how to put all this together and get it out to the world, so that people can at one point maybe be able to access some of these things and either read them or listen to them in person and be able to benefit from their counsel to Sara, or as she's going on the way, be able to benefit from that. It's pretty amazing stuff that she's doing, and it's pretty amazing counsel that they're giving that's applicable for all. It's not just, wow, that's just a message for me. Even the message my daughter had is a message for all. Like, having a loud voice is, how that can play an impact and make a difference, and how they just have love for us and appreciation for us, and how much they want to help us. Anyway, so that's just, some of the things that go through my mind when I think of the beautiful work that Sara's been putting together. And and what it means. There are lots of people. Don't think that she's the only one that's going on the way. There's lots of people that are going on the way. I have shared the Nemenhah record with a young man who's currently on his mission, and he's the only missionary I'd ever contacted. I'm like, usually it's like, leave them alone right now. They're doing their job. And something told me, no, you need to share it with this kid. And he was asking, have you heard about the Book of Mormon? And the Spirit just told me, hey, ask him, have you heard about the record of Haggith from Alma 63? So I did, and that created a whole dialogue that just opened up. He's reading the Nemenhah record while he's on his mission. And it's a joy to him. He's also read the parts where, just like we talked about with Pa Necht and her grandmother, where they had both been communicating and seeing things on the way, just like Sara and her mom. And he's like, hey, guess what? My mom and my sister do the same thing. They see ancestors all the time. And, there's lots of people out there that have these gifts, and sharing the gifts like Sara is now, making that available to the world to know like how this happens, how this works. It's an amazing thing.
Tune in for part 4 of learning to walk on the way and visit with spirits from beyond, as we learn and explore the idea that this is available to anyone and everyone. The spirits really want to speak with us.
Thank you for being here, and don't forget to subscribe. God bless.